channel and welcome to my first video. Today I wanted to make a video about 25 books that I want to read in 2025. I'm a little bit late to the game considering we are 2 weeks into 2025 already, but better late than never. I'm filming this on the 13th, so who knows when I'll get this out. But you know, at least it'll still be January, hopefully. I have my Goodreads pulled up right next to me so that way I can look up, is it a synopsis? A synopsis of, what's a synopsis? No. A synopsis is a short description of the most important information about something. So I have my Goodreads open so I can look up the titles of these books, because most of them, or none of them, or no, like 90% of these I haven't read. So I'm gonna need to know what they're about. And I looked them all up before this too, but I think I'm gonna need to be refreshed. I wrote down some notes on a few of them, but I think that'll only do so much. I have broken this down into 3 different categories. We have books that are on my physical TBR right now that I have with me. Second is books that I need to buy that I also want to read this year. And the third is books that will be released this year that I'll hopefully buy and read this year. The book that I want to mention first in this video is the third book in the Caraval trilogy. I am currently reading the second one, Legendary. And if you don't know, Caraval is about a magical game that's held by Legend, I think once a year. Scarlet writes Legend a letter every single year since she was a kid to get to go to this game, and finally he answers and gives her and her sister tickets. But she loses her sister once she gets on the island that the game is being held at, and she has to find her sister. The 3 books of this trilogy are Caraval, Legendary. Legendary is the one that I'm currently rereading. I read all of these once in 2023. Next, I'll be rereading Finale, and this is the very last book in the trilogy. So that is our first book. And the next book is another book in a series. This one I have not read before, at least not all the way through. I've read the first 4 books, and it is part of the Red Rising series. There is 3 books in the first trilogy. There is Red Rising, Golden Sun, and Morning Star. I've read all of those. There are more books that are set 10 years later. That is Iron Gold, Dark Age, and Lightbringer. I've already read Iron Gold. I read this one last fall. So I have 4 books into this series, and so my next 2 would be Dark Age and Lightbringer. And like I said, Iron Gold takes place 10 years after the 3rd Red Rising book, and I'm pretty sure Dark Age just kind of picks up where that one left off. I hope so, at least. So the next book that I want to read in 2025 is The Unabridged Journals of Sylvia Plath. I'm really starting off very, very strong because this one is very, very hefty. I need to see how many pages it actually is. I forgot how thick it was until I picked it up a minute ago, and I was like, wow, that's a big book. Okay, I think it's 674 pages. Sylvia Plath was an author and a poet, and I think most of her stuff was written, I know she died in '63, so I think most of her stuff was written probably in the 40s and 50s, and maybe the the early 60s as well. But she died really young. I think she was in her 30s. These are all of her journals published in their entirety. There was an abridged version of her journals that was published at some point, but I think this is the most that has ever been published. This is the most that we have access to. I don't think they're altered in any way, so it's just her journals, and you can, I guess you see what kind of goes on, what went on in her head before she died. I'm very excited to read it. A little intimidated because I think it's kind of sad. I think she talks about a lot of mental health things, and for it to be almost 700 pages and about some pretty heavy topics, that's a little daunting, but I am excited to read it because I have read The Bell Jar by her and I really like that. Okay, next one. This one I'm actually really excited for now because I forgot that I had it, and I kind of forgot that it existed. I was planning out this video and I was looking at my bookshelves, and lo and behold, there it was. And I remember not being able to find this book, and then finally finding it and being so happy that I found it, and it's been almost 2 years later and I have not read it still. That book is Divine Rivals. This is about an 18-year-old girl, Iris. Her brother goes off to war and she tries to write him a letter, but it actually gets in the hands of her rival at the paper. And I think from what I've heard how other people talk about it, I think they don't realize they're actually writing to each other. So They're enemies, but probably not for long. My next book has a pretty big fan base around it, I think. I have heard a lot of good things. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. I'm kind of nervous about it for some reason. I don't know why. Something about it, I don't know, maybe that is young adult. But that is Binding 13. From what I can tell, it's set in Ireland, so that's kind of cool. What I think is really neat actually is they have a glossary at the very front. I don't know if you can see that at all, but basically it's just like all of these slang words, and I think even some of their names, and it tells you how to pronounce them, and it's like all this Irish slang, and so that way it's very accurate, but you're like in the know because they tell you all the slang words, and so you know what they're talking about. But from what I can tell, it's about a shy girl and a popular guy. I guess she's not just shy, she's actually bullied, but he wants to protect her. And I'm pretty sure there is like a friend group, so maybe found family vibes, I don't know. But just from how people have talked about it, it sounds like a big friend group, and it kind of gave me, when I hear people talk about it, it kind of gives me Magnolia Parks vibes. Maybe that's just because they're all in high school and it's like a friend group and it's not in America. I don't know. Those are the vibes I get, but that's all I really know about it. She's bullied, she's shy, he wants to protect her. I think because of that, it can be a little bit cringe. That's what I've heard some people talk about, that it can be a little bit much, but a lot of people really like it, so I'm excited. This next one is actually another reread. This is the last reread that I have on my list, but this is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I read this one, I want to think it was the end of 2023, going into 2024. This is a dark academia book. I love dark academia so much. I don't know what it is about it. Something about it. You find out from the very beginning, really, that one of their friends died. A certain word for a style like that, where it like the climactic moment like from the first chapter, but you have no idea how you get there, and so then you spend pretty much the rest, maybe not the rest of the book, but a big majority of the book getting to that climactic point, and that's exactly what this one does. That first chapter, you find out that one of them died, and then you go all the way back to when they first met, and it takes you through the series of events that led to this person's death. It's kind of moody. It's a little bit, what's the word? Pretentious. Most of the characters and a little bit of the point of view is really pretentious. I know that writing can be a little bit annoying for some, but if done well, I think it can be a little bit interesting to read. This one, it's slow. I think that's the biggest complaint that I hear about, is that it is really slow and it does kind of almost drag on a little bit, but I enjoyed it. It did take me a while to read because it does kind of move slowly, but it's worth it, I think. The biggest thing that makes me want to reread it is he spends, because this is set at a school in New England, in I think Vermont, and I'm pretty sure it's a fictional college, but it's in Vermont, and so in the winter it gets really cold and it's like snowing and it's just absolutely freezing, and your main character, he doesn't really have anywhere to stay his first winter there. He doesn't want to go back home all the way to California, so he just kind of roughs it, and he spends a really cold winter just not really having anywhere to live. We have been getting some really cold weather. I say really cold, it's been like 30 degrees, but that's really cold for where I live. It keeps making me think of his winter that he spends alone. Even though it's just 30 degrees outside, I just keep thinking of him curled up and freezing on the brink of death. And that is also a really slow part of the book, but I honestly really liked it. One of the things that stood out to me the most, for some reason. This really cold weather has made me really want to curl up and read this. The next book is The Maiden. This one recently I discovered was dark academia. I love dark academia, what'd I tell you? This has been sitting on my shelf for a really long time, and I think I read A Silent Patient by this author and loved it, bought this one. I heard like one bad thing and I just didn't want to pick it up again. So it's just been sitting on my shelf, and then I heard that it was dark academia and it piqued my interest again, and so I looked at what it was about. Basically, this girl is convinced that her professor is a murderer, but I think a lot of the girls in her school really have taken a liking to him. And so I think she's the only one that thinks that he's a murderer, and she is convinced of it. Her obsession with finding out whether he's the murderer or not kind of makes her life spin out of control a little bit. Ever since I found out it was Dark Academia, I kind of want to read it now. Not really the season for Dark Academia. I tend to read those more in the fall, but sometimes with the winter, the mood has struck. Everything I have physically with me that I know I want to read this year. The next category I have books that I want to buy this year and read this year. We're gonna keep the Dark Academia vibes going. I want to read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. In this book, we're in the point of view of Jessica going to her college reunion where she will see her 5 friends again. A murder happened when they were in college and it broke their friend group apart. And so when they reunite, they are forced to face their past and all the secrets that they have. The next book that I would like to read this year is Light Lark. This one, when I read the synopsis of it, it really made me think of Caraval, and I think that's part of why I want to read it. Every 100 years, the island of Light Lark hosts a centennial, which I think is a competition where the rulers of the 6 realms, they're invited to play for the chance at breaking the curse that has been put on the realms. So you got the magical only every 100 years, you have the competition to break a curse. I think it sounds really interesting and I really hope I can read it. Okay, next. The next book we have. I didn't think I'd ever read it. I don't know why. I'd always see it and always see people talk about it and I would think, oh, not for me, not for me. It is a young adult fantasy series, Shatter Me. I knew what the first one was about roughly. It's about a girl named Juliet. She's 17 and she has a lethal touch. So anyone she touches dies. The reestablishment, who I guess is the government, they lock her up and then they're like, wait a minute, because like I guess the government's just like crumbling. They're like, wait a minute, we can use you. What for? I don't know. But I knew that. But then I saw a TikTok about, I think, one of the other books, and that also piqued my interest. Can't remember what it was about, but I remember being very intrigued. I've given it some more thought now, and I think I might try reading at least the first one, if not all of them. Next book that I'm wanting to read is Bear Town. I'd heard of this. I had no idea, not a clue what it was about. But I've been hearing a lot of good things, and so I looked up what it was about. What I can tell is about a tiny community. I think it's called Bear Town. It's kind of hidden in like a forest. It sounded, honestly, it did sound fairly boring until I got to the end of the synopsis where it said junior ice hockey team was going to the semifinals, and something about the semifinals was a catalyst to a girl being traumatized. Sounds really sad, and I think I've heard that it's a little bit sad. I'm really interested now in reading it. I think the whole point of the book is just community and what brings people together. Having one girl traumatized by whatever happened affected the whole town. I'm sure it's just about them navigating that. All right, this next one is Happily Never After. I read Better Than Movies by this author as well. I really like that one. I tried to read another one of her books, one of her adult romances, and I was not really a fan. This is an adult romance, so I am a little bit nervous, but it just sounds like it's gonna be so good, or at least like have such a good plot that maybe even if I don't really like it, I'll still like just the plot. Sophie finds out that her fiance has been cheating on her, but instead of calling off the wedding, she hires Max. He's a professional, I don't know if he has another job, but he is a professional wedding disruptor. Basically the person that stands up and says like, oh, I object to this marriage. He does that, and people hire him to do that, so I guess they don't have to get married. So she hires him to come disrupt her wedding. When she enjoys the revenge so much, he asks her to join him. And so they can disrupt weddings together. It sounds so fun and so funny and so unique. This next book is The Storied Life of A.J. Fickery. This is written by the same author of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which I also read. I did enjoy that one. I don't know if I should say I enjoyed it. I had no ill feelings toward it, but I also, like, looking back, when I think about me reading it, I think I liked the writing, and I remember a lot of what happened, so I think that's a good sign. But I didn't have any feelings of like, wow, but I also didn't have any bad feelings. Like, there was no, I read it and that was it. I have hopes for this one too. I've heard a lot of really good things as well. Basically, AJ's life not going well. A lot of things seem to be going wrong, and then all of a sudden one day he gets this unexpected package. What it is, I don't know. It inspires him to just turn his life around. Everyone starts to notice, but then I think the synopsis said something about maybe things, I don't know, go a different direction. I have heard it has really good writing, and it's just about personal transformation, second chances at life, and it sounds like it's very lyrical and contemporary, which I don't really read a lot of, but something about this one just, I kind of want to try it out. Okay, this next one. This basically feels like a long list of all these popular books that everyone's already read that I'm just behind on. This next one is The Housemaid. It's about a housemaid that gets hired. She starts to envy the wife's life and her husband and the kid and all this stuff. So she decides one day, when I was reading the synopsis for this, it felt almost like it was a unreliable narrator. I could be wrong, but she decides to try on the wife's, I think one of her white dresses, which crazy behavior. But then she's trying it on, and all of a sudden the door to the room that she's in locks from the outside. That's all you know. I have read a couple of Freida McFadden's books recently. Actually, I think I read 2 back to back. I went through a little bit of a kick, and so I think her writing style is really good, and I think the way she formats the story and the way she tells it is just, it's addicting. I just flew through those books. This one sounds really good. I know it's got a lot of hype, and so I'm really excited to read it. Next book, very different from the last one, Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. I recently read The Bodyguard by her. I say recently. I think I read The Bodyguard by her this past summer. That one was really good. I actually really liked that one. Sometimes just straight romances I don't really click with, but that one I really liked. I think I'd really like this one too. Her writing was really good, and I think she tells the story really well. You have your main character, and she is in, I think, an art competition. I think she's a finalist in like a portrait competition. The next thing you know, she wakes up in a hospital with maybe temporary facial blindness, which is basically where like someone's face is just, you can't see the features, it's just blurry, so you can't tell the difference between people, which does not sound like it'd be an easy thing for someone who does portraits for a living. It said she maybe falls in love with 2 men, so either love triangle or I don't know. It sounded really intriguing, and it sounds like it could be really good, and the cover's really pretty. Not that that matters, but alright, the next book I have is The Ministry of Time. This one, picture. One day, I am in line, in a long line, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., something like that, for donuts. Okay, what better to do than to go on, what was it? Like the Apple Book app. And I read a sample of The Ministry of Time, and I actually really liked it. I read this while standing in line. That was it, and I started it, and I liked it, but it was just the sample, so I didn't keep reading. It was really good, and I would really like to finish it. Basically is about this girl, and she works for some type of agency or company that they pull people from history, people that they know are going to die, and they pull them from random spots in history and they bring them to the present, and they need someone to stay with them to help them adjust to current day. She is one of those people, and it's her and this guy, I forget their names, but I think that's all that I really got to read, was just kind of the beginning part of that and like their interactions with each other. So the premise is really interesting, and I would really like to finish it. I don't think I ever see it in Barnes & Noble, so I'm wondering if I just have to order it. That's probably why I haven't really bought it yet, because I haven't, if I don't see it, I guess I don't buy it. But I would really like to finish that. Okay, the next book I have is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I've heard of her. I have heard lots of really good things, and she is one of the authors I would like to try out this year. I picked Just for the Summer because it sounded really good, and I'm pretty sure it's one of her more popular books. It's the one I hear a lot. It also sounds so interesting. So you have Justin and you have Emma, and they both have the same curse, where the person that they are dating, when they break up, they end up finding their soulmate. He makes a Reddit post about it and about this issue, and the thing goes viral, and then Emma finds it and she decides to DM him, and they come up with this plan to date, and then that way their curses cancel each other out, and then once they break up, they will find their soulmates. So, really cool premise. I'm really excited to read it. The next book I have is The Book That Wouldn't Burn strictly for the cover, and it has a good rating on Goodreads. I saw it in Barnes & Noble. It is just, it really caught my attention. It's beautiful. I saw it and I looked up the Goodreads reviews of it, and I think it has over a 4 point something star review. I tried reading the synopsis, and I'll be honest, it is a little bit confusing. I don't really know what it's about. Basically, the boy, I think, lives in the library, or he's trapped in a library, and he's lived his whole life in a library. Then you have a girl who's lived like in a smaller settlement, middle of nowhere, maybe? Somehow their stories spiral around each other. Don't know what that means. There was something it said at the very end that I thought was kind of interesting. Journey on which knowledge erodes certainty, and on which, though the pen may be mightier than the sword, blood will be spilled and cities burned. It sounds really intense it sounds fairly intense for a cover that cute. It just, I don't know. I guess there's nothing too crazy about it, but I don't know. I saw it and I was just like, wow, I really want to read that. The next book I have is one I've heard about for a while, but I just never actually read it. But it's called Roundabout. I think I need to order it because I never see it in Barnes & Noble. It is about a man named Ovid, runs away randomly. I think he's like 49, and he runs away from his normal life. He has a family, he has a job, and he just runs because he has this realization that an author is writing about him. And this is really interesting because I can't tell whether it's like an actual person in his world that he thinks is writing about him, or if it's like an Inception type of thing where he's acting crazy and he thinks someone's writing about him, but really we're reading it from the point of view of the author, if that makes sense. But something else that's also really cool about this book is the whole thing is written without ever using the letter, I think it's the letter E. I am really, really, really intrigued to see how he pulls that off, because if he has a wife is spelled with an E. I guess it could use her name. I was trying to go through what word they could use. They can't use wife, they can't use partner. I don't know, there's probably another one I can't think of, but I mean the whole thing without the letter E, that's crazy. The next book that I have is One Dark Window. This one I see a lot and I always think about buying it and I never do, but I need to just buy it and read it. So our main character's name is a little different, Elspeth. I only say that because I don't want to mispronounce it. But Elspeth, she has like a spirit that's like trapped in her mind, and she names him Nightmare. One day Elspeth runs into a mysterious man who happens to also be the king's nephew. She joins him on this quest to cure Blunder, which I guess is where they live. She joins him on a quest to cure Blunder from the dark magic that has been infecting it. Together they have to gather 12 Providence cards. These are the keys to the cure. They have to go on a quest to find all of them. It sounds, I could be wrong, but it sounds kind of gothic and a little bit, probably a good winter read. A little bit gothic, and then you have that quest, and it just sounds really fun. Alright, the next book that I have is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. And there are two reasons I want to read this. One is because 11/22 is my birthday. So I'm going to try to read it, and I've been telling myself this for like the past 3 years. I have it not with me, but I told myself I'd do this in 2023, 2024, and now I'm saying this in 2025. I want to read it on my birthday week. maybe this year will be the year. November 22nd is also the day that, not the same day because I'm not that old, but it's also the day that Kennedy was assassinated. There's an English teacher who decides he's going to prevent the assassination, and so I think he time travels back to that day to try to prevent it from happening. And so you have time travel, and I've heard from other people say, I think you have a little bit of romance in it, but I think this is one of his only books that is not horror. I've only read one other Stephen King book, and it was one of his later ones, and I was not that much of a fan of it. I've heard that this one and some of his older novels are a little bit better, so I'm hoping I'll like it. I've heard it's one of, like, if you're not a big fan of horror, which, but if you're not a big fan of horror, most people still really like this one. So, okay, so I think that was 22, so we only have 3 more left, and these 3 are the ones that caught my eye when I was looking at the releases for 2025. But we have, let me look up what they're about. We have The Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This one comes out April 22nd. Emily Henry's books for me are a little bit hit or miss. I think I've read about 4, and I would say 2 of those I really liked and 2 of them I did not really. There was one I really did not like. I'm not gonna say it because a lot of people really like it, and it made me sad that I didn't. I liked Funny Story and People We Meet on Vacation. Those I really liked. I kind of liked Beach Read. It was one of those like books where you're like it's good when you're reading it and like you don't mind it when you're reading it, and then like you're done with it and you're like, okay. So I'm really curious to see if I'm going to like this new one that she has coming out, and I really do want to try it. Okay, so I read the synopsis of this one a couple days ago, so I was kind of iffy on some of the details. But Alice Scott and a man named Hayden Anderson, they both want to write the same biography about the same woman, and so they are both invited to, I think, live with her. They're invited to stay in like the same house or on the same island or something. Guess whoever's work she likes the most is the one that she's gonna pick. And so they're kind of like close quarters, having to like compete. I've noticed a very common trend of hers is she likes to write about authors, and so this is, I think, follows that as well. So the lady Margaret, who they're trying to write about, is only giving them each pieces of her story, and they can't swap them. Pieces they can't swap to put together because of an ironclad NDA and an inconvenient yearning pulsing between them every time they're in the same room. I'm really excited to try that one. The next book is One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. I have read Every Summer After by her, and I really like that one. I think some people didn't. There's one of hers, oh, I can't remember. There's one of hers that was really popular that I think just about everyone liked. Some people were iffy on Every Summer After. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. It was a really good summer read. I think it's one of those I would only enjoy in the summer because of just the vibes. This one's called One Golden Summer, and just by the cover and what it's about, it feels like it falls in the same category as the other stuff she's written. So I have a feeling I might like it, but I'm really bad at reading synopses because I don't like knowing precisely what I'm going to be reading about. I like to have a very vague idea, just be surprised. So whenever I read a synopsis, I'm a big skimmer. So some of my details are probably really fuzzy. It seems like, okay, so it's about a girl. This one's about a girl named Alice. She spent one summer with her grandmother when she was 17 and took a picture of her and a few teenagers in a boat. And then she comes back. This guy is in this picture that she took, and he's only 19 when she took it. She comes back and he's all grown up and he's a flirt now. It sounds like it's got really good summer vibes. It comes out on May 6th, just in time for the summer, and I'm really excited. I would really like to try this out. It sounds similar to, sounds like her style. Okay, my 25th book that I would like to read for this year is Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. This is also the same author who wrote Rock, Paper, Scissors, which I've also read. I think it's the only book of hers that I have read, but I really liked it. It had a lot of really good build-up and a lot of, I remember feeling kind of creeped out when I was reading it. So this is about a man named Grady. He's on the phone with his wife one day, and all of a sudden he hears her slam on the brakes, then get out of her car, and doesn't hear anything. When they find her car, it is there, door open, she's gone. His wife is missing, and they have no idea where she went. Years later, he's still grieving his wife, obviously. He decides to take some time away. He goes to a Scottish island where he happens to see a woman who looks exactly like his wife. Kind of eerie. Sounds like it could be really good. I really liked her writing. And this one is gonna come out by the time I post this, but this one comes out tomorrow. It comes out on January 14th. I'm gonna make sure that I was actually 25 because now I'm starting to second guess myself. 25. Okay, no, that was 25. Okay, so those are the 25 books that I know that I would really like to read for this year. Hopefully I can, hopefully I will. But as for the list, that's it. I think that's everything for this video. This was a lot of fun to film. Hopefully I will make some time to make more content. I'd like to start being regular with putting some stuff out. I haven't talked about myself much. I haven't even said my name. Okay, I'm Bethany. I started reading regularly in the summer of 2022, so it's been about 2.5 years of fairly consistent reading, slumps here and there, but I have stayed loving it for this long, and I love watching book content, and I would really like to start making some of my own. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking around. I really hope you enjoyed, and leave a like if you did. That'd be greatly appreciated, and you can also subscribe to hopefully see some of the books I mentioned in this video. Until then, hopefully I'll see you in my next one. Bye! I'm gonna hate going through this. It is hot. Hi. Hello and welcome to my channel. This is my very first video. Should I say hi or hello? Okay. I think I sound like a maniac. don't want to do all of that again. I'll be honest with you. The book. Some pretty crazy stuff goes down. I didn't write down any of the main character names when I was making notes. Okay, for my next book,